Hello, friends. Viva Life Skills trainers and consultants, under their initiative of career guidance called the Pathfinders, brings to you today an eminent personality, Mr. Pradeep Gupte. Mr. Pradeep Gupte is a man of all seasons, and he has donned many a hats, but primarily he's been an entrepreneur. He's run his business successfully for more than 2 decades, and we actually choose to call him Professor Pradeep Gupte because another important hat that he donned, again for more than 2 decades, is that of being a professor of business management. Mr. Pradeep Gupte. So let's welcome him onto our program. Welcome, Mr.
Hello, hello everybody. Nice to be there with you all. It was very kind, Colonel Gupte, to introduce me in that extraordinary manner. But if it's going to be helpful to the younger generation, I would be glad.
Yeah, given your background and given your vast experience, I'm sure it's going to be extremely beneficial to our viewers of this program. So shall I start? Which I usually ask everyone is, as to what motivated you to decide that you would want to be an entrepreneur?
Well, Colonel Gupte, there are three ways in which the entrepreneurship comes to the fore. It's chasing the dream, change in lifestyle, or disruption. In my case, it was more of disruption.
Oh, I see.
Now, why do we call it disruption is because, say, maybe because of quirk of fate, because of perhaps relocation, or maybe the closure of the company, you are left with no choice but to start using your skills that you have developed in the job. Okay. Now, in my case, as the women folk would always say, or the women of the industry would say that there's glass ceiling at the top. Even I started feeling that in 1993-94, when I felt that, well, now that's the saturation point that I have come to in the corporate sector. And I need to do something on my own with the skills, with the contacts that I had developed. Right. So fortunately for me, the proximity with one of my vendors, one of my suppliers, helped me because it brought the opportunity of joining hands and starting something together in a place called Sinnar at Nasik. So we put up a manufacturing unit, right, and it went on steam in 96. But it was more out of disruption. Right. And in the earlier period of the entrepreneurship till the time its gestation is over, or right, maybe turnaround is over, right, difficult because then we will talk about it. What are the travels and what are the pinpricks of entrepreneurship? But yeah, that is what triggered, that is what egged me to start on my own.
Absolutely. See, there's another very common question which I ask all the professionals is, what are your initial days as a youngster in the profession? Now, in your case, probably as an absolute youngster, fresh from the college, you had struggles of different kinds, and then at a little later stage, you took the decision of, getting into entrepreneurship. So you could describe struggles of both levels.
In fact, I would say that I was groping. In fact, I had no ideal, or I had no what you call a dream at the time of finishing my graduation. In fact, it is quite exceptional in the other way around. Not that I was fired by any such ambition. I was carried by the So I could say that when we passed out, most of my classmates started settling in the job whichever they felt they were cut out for. Most of them chose the profession of medical representatives, which somehow I was not quite comfortable with. And I wanted to start off my career in the commercial function, especially sourcing, purchase, maybe materials management, which was not easy to come back. So I had to bid for time. So I took almost about 2 years before I could get an opportunity to work in such a function. Right. Because I felt that my demeanor or my character was more cut out for a sort of a job in sourcing where man management or maybe people centricity was more important.
Right.
In fact, you have to handle, you have to manage the vendors, you have to see that the proper closeness and proximity, the camaraderie that is built with them. Right. So that is what I was waiting for. So for 2 years, I literally cultivated my own opportunities I cultivated. I could say the avenues to be able to see that I get the uh, opportunity or I get the chance to be
Right.
able to work for a corporate in the sourcing function.
Right.
So let me be very honest about the fact that at the time of graduation, I found that some of my classmates, some of my contemporaries were quite clear in their mind what they had to pursue in life. I would say that I went by the path that the life took me to. I had no path, I had no role model, or I had no target set in my life as such at that point in time. Then I realized that okay, my personality had not developed. I was very poor in communication. I didn't have vocabulary. I did not know most of the what we call general knowledge areas. If I had to appear for the interview, then I need to be knowing that. So I went on studying. I went on finding out lots of information and
Right.
started developing my communication skills. It was in those 2 years, 1.5, 2 years that I spent
Sure.
reinventing myself. That's about it.
Right. So this is very interesting. I mean, this is kind of not really very common kind of a struggle
Yes,
that people talk about, because
absolutely, absolutely.
you were probably looking for orientation. You lacked orientation, and you
Right,
lacked any
right.
support. You lacked any guidance. So this was a very,
Yes,
very tough time to get through. Very,
absolutely,
very, very
absolutely,
appreciable. Really, very appreciable.
absolutely,
Right.
absolutely.
So once you made up your mind and you actually got going in your new venture that you started, you must have faced a lot of challenges again. I mean, how do you grow your venture? You started off well.
My goodness, my goodness. But before coming to the entrepreneurial life of mine, I
Right.
would say that for the youngsters, for the younger generation, what I would like to, in fact, state is this: that what is important in life is one must understand that when you start working, when you are into some sort of a portfolio, when you are working for somebody, you have to understand that you are at the receiving end. You are at the wrong end of the stick. In my case, what happened was, in spite of the fact that I had to wait for an opportunity for whatever period that I waited for, when I started working for the first company, within about 18 months, I did not see eye to eye with one superior that was brought, in between. I was put under somebody else with whom I had some sort of a prejudice, which
Right.
was very incorrect. Which was very incorrect, and that happens only because if you don't have focus, if you don't have proper ideals created in your mind, that what are you here for?
Right.
Basically, you are like that raw clay, and you have to be molded, or you have to get molded the way the organization wants you to get molded. You
Right.
cannot have say that no, I'll work for only. See, Karan Gupte, I would say that the choice of parents and the choice of boss doesn't rest with you.
True.
As much as you have to accept whoever your parents are, similarly, you have to accept whoever your boss. Then that's modesty, that humility the
Right.
current generation has to create.
Right. 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 Sure. Sure. I understand. I understand.
And
And
then once I was in the groove, then it started happening because by the time I had developed my communication skills, I had developed my personality, I had a few skill sets, few personal traits that I had developed.
yeah.
The soft skills, what
So
we talk of.
actually, you are bringing me to the next question that I had planned. I wanted you to. You probably already talked about it a bit, but probably you could amplify more on this. So, what are those typical personal skills and personality traits that are desirable if you really want to be a successful entrepreneur? There are many, I
Right.
know, but you could probably.
I know, but then the first and the foremost is people centricity. If you are not, if you are not good at developing relations with the people, in fact, and I don't have to quote again, you must have that sharp memory to be able to remember, to be able to identify and upload in your faculties the different what you call identity traits, or maybe different characteristics of a person, what the person is comfortable with, there are we all have our own preferences. We like to be comfortable with a few individuals, or maybe discussing a few topics. So those what you call comfort zones of every individual, you must have as your glossary. So when you meet that person, you must broach that topic, that okay, how are you doing in such and such fact. In fact, you had mentioned this to me. So
Right.
now, how is the progress, sir?
Right.
Immediately that person will create some sort of identification
Correct.
mark in the mind.
Right.
The
Absolutely.
recall value, I call it. The recall value.
Recall.
Once you do that,
Right.
then slowly, as you enter into any particular field, you
Right.
start creating your own ecosystem there. You
Right.
start creating your own
Right.
world.
Absolutely. Professor Gupte, actually there is a bunch of people sitting here with me. They are not visible to you. Yeah.
Okay.
So they include schoolboys and girls and their parents. Then there are people who are still trying to decide whether they want to become an entrepreneur, would they want to get into it. They are a little elderly, but not the school type or not the college type freshers, but they have seen a little bit of a world, and they are making up their mind whether they want to become an entrepreneur. And the school types are generally wanting to know what an entrepreneur is all about, right? They have
Okay.
it is out of curiosity, and also there are people who are young people who are currently working in some private companies, and even they aspire to someday start their own business. So that is the kind of those are the kind of people who are right now here with me. So how would you address them and give them a very realistic viewpoint of how it would be for them if they actually became an entrepreneur?
Okay. I suppose that is going to open a Pandora's box, because entrepreneurship is a very different type of pursuit. I could say it's a hot potato. In fact, to be able to hold on with it, you require a tremendous amount of grit and determination, because the success is not guaranteed and it is not time bound.
Right.
One thing you have to understand is, all right, it could be fulfillment of your dreams. It could be perhaps creating a lot of economic resources, but it is also time bound. So that is what the gestation and that is what the turnaround is all about.
Right.
So one must have patience. One must have patience, and one must have confidence. One must have tremendous amount of trust in oneself that, okay, whatever I am doing, first of all, I am drawing satisfaction. It is always good to work for oneself rather than working for somebody else, and which is what many a times you will find that communities do. You will find that the communities such as Marwadis and Gujaratis, they start siring their children right from the younger days that you can't work, you don't have to work for anybody, you have to work for yourself.
You have to work for yourself.
And what you must, or what the current generation, current genre must do is find out, first of all, what is that activity, what is that pursuit one is enjoying oneself doing. It could be anything. You may be a pet lover, you may be perhaps a foodie, or you could be a sports enthusiast.
Right.
So I would say that, as we call it, that apple doesn't fall far from its tree. Similarly, the entrepreneurial pursuit shall not be far from what hobby you are pursuing.
Right. Okay.
You should enjoy whatever you're doing. Perhaps it cannot give you the amount of economic resources that you are soliciting, but you should enjoy whatever you do, and it is always that pleasure that you derive at the end of the day, that yes, I did something for my own. I did something out of my own I could say pursuit, my own dreams that I was harboring all these days.
Right. Sure. So I would also like to know, once you become an entrepreneur, the typical workflow, or let's say the business operations workflow, the way it goes, you acquire a customer, and then you process his demand, whatever his requirement is, and then you finally fulfill his demand, and then you get paid for it, right? So what are those typical milestones that go into the process?
Understand one thing, that the relationship that you create, once you start, there is a difference between being a businessman to that of entrepreneur.
Right.
Entrepreneur is whole lot innovative, whole lot different from what a business person is, or what a businessman is.
Right.
Right. So in case of entrepreneurs, in fact, you have to stamp your identity by doing something different, or doing the same things differently. Please understand this. So that is your innovativeness, your what you call uniqueness has to come out in whatever that you do. So when you deal with the same service that you provide. Now, take for example your urban company that is providing you the service at your doorstep. What different pursuit does it carry out? It is only providing carpenters, plumbers, or maybe for that matter, any service that you require at your doorstep.
Right.
It's all about the sort of back-endedness that they have created with all such work hands,
Yeah.
and the sort of platform that they have provided for people like you and me who go on soliciting the work. So one thing is that they should have such type of services at the beck and call.
Right.
And today's need for the generation is this, that they must sniff opportunity in this mission. That where does that? In fact, I came across one site which was providing the help hands, domestic help, on a sort of beacon or on a dial,
Right.
or maybe on messaging. So what does that mean? That you go down to their level of the domestic help, you have good relations, and you have the sort of trust created, so that any inquiry that comes up, you are able to provide that, you are able to reciprocate within no amount of time.
Right.
So one must develop the skill of maintaining the sort of contacts, maintaining the resources, and those resources should be able to reciprocate at any time of the day, at beck and call,
Right.
the way it is happening.
Right. Now, yet I'm going to put across one more question, which is very, very common in the minds of people, no matter what profession they choose to join, and that is about and this question is very much there in the minds of not only these young people, but particularly also in the minds of their parents. And that question is, well, what are the prospects in this, right? So, moment you use the word prospects, it is actually underlying that there could be many connotations. so what would you say? I mean, you've already said that success is not guaranteed, and time it's not time bound, right? So it does give some idea about the prospect. But how would you kind of amplify that for our members to understand?
In fact, the first and the foremost needed trait, or perhaps the prerequisite, is perseverance. In fact, even if the prospects are not there, the first trait, the first personal skill that is required is perseverance.
Right.
If you have that, what you call habit, or if you are of a nature that you would like to try out and then give it up at the second instance, that no, there are no prospects, because prospects are for you to create. I don't think Paytm or maybe MobiQuick, all these portals which came up, they had thought about the prospects. They have created their own prospects. Swiggy or Zomato, today look at it, the platform is almost inevitable, or it has become the part of your personal life. Right. But when they started off, what were the prospects? So prospects are something that you have to create. But first and the foremost is you must have confidence and the undying skill of perseverance.
Right.
Never say die, should be the spirit.
Right, sir. Right. So in fact, for paucity of time, I would rush to the last question of our session, and that is about the future trends. Now, it is well known that the digital world is actually impacting everything. And digital world, until unless you have a good connect with the digital world, probably you may not be really able to progress the way someone in your own profession progressed 30 years ago or 20 years ago. Right?
Absolutely right.
He has to have a very strong connect with the digital world. So what would you list out as some of those key points which are the future trends in being an entrepreneur?
In fact, I have started developing this particular thought process that tomorrow's shopping, in fact, it has happened now. Today's shopping is not something that you will be setting out from your own house to be able to go to the brick and mortar stores. It will happen within the four walls of your house.
Right.
So now it is up to the current generation to think of what are the various services that can be provided in this fashion. And many a times it seems what is software or what is digital world is ultimately the medium. Maybe you could think of another medium which could be a parallel to the digital world, all right, which can be perhaps opening up the newer opportunities for entrepreneurship and for doing something on your own. It all depends upon your own thinking, your own innovativeness.
Right.
And I would say that, just to sum it up, today's world is such that it's full of opportunities if you say so, or absolutely devoid of opportunity if you don't think aloud. That's about it.
Absolutely, absolutely. So, for paucity of time, Professor Gupta,
No issue. No issue.
here, but
yeah.
you have been really brilliant, and the way you shared your wisdom, gathered over in a very hard manner, gathered over more than 2 decades. Our listeners and our members are really blessed to have you and listen from you in person. So, what I liked particularly was your emphasis on people centricity. I think you a couple of times you repeated that people centricity. Then you talked about the grit and determination and self confidence. I mean, these are all the traits that the youngsters need to have if they really want to be a successful entrepreneur. So thank you so much, Professor Gupte, for those.
My pleasure. My pleasure. And
thank you very much on behalf of all our members of Viva Life Skills Trainers and Consultants. Thank you so much.
My pleasure.